Have you ever wondered how a seemingly ordinary family photo hanging on the wall of a Victorian living room could have hidden terrifying secrets for more than a century? On a rainy afternoon in Boston, Dr. Amanda Foster, an American history expert, stumbled upon an old portrait from 1895 capturing a seemingly ordinary-looking family with the parents standing solemnly, 3 children staring intently into the lens. But as her eyes scanned the intricate details on the living room floor, something out of this world emerged, a hint of crimes that had been hidden for decades. From old photos, diaries, and seemingly forgotten records, a story of a noble family crime and forgotten victims gradually emerged. These secrets will lead us into a world where appearances can be deceiving, where brutal crimes were once hidden in the homes of victims and perpetrators. In this video, we explore the Blackwood case, a mystery that has lasted more than a century, where a family portrait became evidence of unimaginable crimes. On a rainy October afternoon in 2023, as raindrops pattered against her Boston window, Dr. Amanda Foster, a professor of American history at Boston University, made what would become one of the most chilling discoveries in the century-old history of crime. Her small antique shop on Beacon Street had been her refuge from academic pressure for years, and the shop's owner, Samuel Whitman, often kept interesting historical items just for her. That day, Whitman carefully unwrapped an intricately carved wooden frame explaining that the item came from a Salem estate. The family was cleaning out her great-grandmother's attic, wanting to get rid of everything quickly. The elderly woman Whitman said never spoke of her childhood. She had said it was too painful to recall. The framed photograph is a Victorian-style family portrait typical of the 1890s that Foster studied. It shows a prosperous American family in 1895, standing in a carefully decorated living room. The father stands in the background, behind the seated mother, both dressed in formal Victorian middle-class attire. 3 children, aged between 8 and 16, are arranged around the parents in the meticulous composition favored by photographers of the time. At first glance, the photograph appears entirely ordinary. The clothing, the interior, the shooting technique are all standard 1895. The family's expressions are solemn, as is often the case in Victorian portraits, where natural smiles are difficult to achieve because of the long exposure time. Mrs. Foster bought the photograph for $65, primarily to use as a teaching material on middle-class life in the late 19th century. Little knowing that this seemingly innocuous portrait would soon reveal crimes buried for more than 128 years. That evening, as she prepared to place the photograph into an academic archive, a small but shocking discovery completely changed her view of Victorian family life and launched an investigation into one of the most horrific cases in American history. In her office near Boston University, Mrs. Foster began the standard archival process for the 1895 photograph. Using professional lighting and a high-resolution digital camera, she photographed every detail of the portrait for inclusion in the archive. Victorian family portraits were her specialty, and she had developed a keen eye for small details that revealed social class, regional customs, and family relationships. The photograph, 12 by 16 inches in size, framed in an ornately carved wooden frame, showed the family's wealth. The backdrop was a typical Victorian living room with its ornate wallpaper-heavy curtains and massive furniture, all symbolic of the respectability and stability of the late 19th century. As Mrs. Foster examined the clothing and furnishings, her eyes fell on the objects hanging on the wall behind her father's left shoulder. Victorian homes were known for their ornate walls, and this living room was no exception. Picture frames, decorative plates, and religious images were all arranged in elaborate arrangements. But as the magnifying glass slid over, Mrs. Foster's breath caught. Among the ordinary decorations, she saw something that should never have appeared in a prominent family. What was it? What looked like framed human scalps hung like hunting trophies. They were arranged in neat rows, each skin preserved and displayed with the same care as other frames or religious works. The texture and color of the hair varied, suggesting they came from different individuals. The expert mounting suggested someone had put a lot of effort into preserving and displaying them. Mrs. Foster's hand trembled as she returned the magnifying glass, hoping she was mistaken. But there was no mistaking it. A Victorian family had their formal portrait taken in a room where the decorations were human body parts as normal as family photos or religious paintings. Can you imagine what Mrs. Foster must have felt? A moment of silence with only the sound of rain falling outside the window, and a creepy feeling creeping into every strand of hair, every carved wooden frame. What other secrets did this portrait hold? Stories that history had forgotten. The consequences of this discovery were unimaginable, and Dr. Foster suddenly realized she was looking at evidence that could be linked to multiple murders eerily recorded in a family portrait more than a century old. She immediately contacted Dr. Robert Chen, a forensic anthropologist at Harvard Medical School, who had special experience analyzing historical evidence. The next morning, when Dr. Chen arrived at her office, he examined the photo under professional magnification and confirmed her worst fears. "This is definitely a human scalp," he said after a thorough analysis. Every detail from the hairstyle, the preservation to the display arrangement suggested that someone had taken great care to collect and display it as a trophy. Despite his professional demeanor, the shudder was evident in his eyes. The forensic analysis revealed other horrifying details. The scalps have different hair textures and colors from blonde to black, straight or curly, suggesting that the victims were of various ages and possibly ethnic origins. This points to a systematic pattern of violence, not isolated incidents. Most disturbing is the preservation technique. Whoever prepared the scalps was certainly knowledgeable about body dyeing and skin preservation, a meticulous preparation rather than an impulsive act. This was not done in a moment of anger or emotion, Mr. Chen explains. This was a planned, methodical collection and display over time. Research into photographic practices in the 1890s shows that families often chose to display their most precious items in portrait sessions, wanting to demonstrate wealth and social status to posterity. The family's decision to include the collection of scalps in their official portrait suggests they were not ashamed or afraid of their presence. Perhaps the crimes were never discovered by local police. Miss Foster's investigation into the photo's provenance revealed that it came from the estate of Margaret Blackwood, who died at age 94 in Salem, Massachusetts. Estate records show that Margaret was the youngest child in the 1895 portrait, an 8-year-old girl standing next to her mother's chair. This fact adds to the horror. One of the children in the photo lived until 2023, carrying the family's horrific secret to the grave, but never reporting it or seeking justice for the victims. Ms. Foster's discovery immediately prompted the Massachusetts State Police to launch an official investigation, dubbing the incident the Salem Scalp Collection Case. Detective Maria Rodriguez, who specializes in solving historical cold cases, began by examining Essex County missing persons records from the 1890s, looking for connections to the evidence in the photograph. The investigation revealed a disturbing number of unexplained disappearances in Salem from 1890 to 1900. Local newspaper archives recorded at least 12 mysterious disappearances. These disappearances spanned a decade, matching the time period suggested by the portrait. The missing included travelers passing through Salem local residents from nearby towns, and some described as vagrants whose disappearances may not have triggered extensive investigation at the time. The victims' varied backgrounds matched Dr. Chen's analysis of the hair types in the scalp collection. More remarkably, Detective Rodriguez discovered that several of the disappearances occurred within 15 feet of the Blackwood family's estate, where they owned a large ranch that was both remote enough to commit crimes and convenient for handling evidence. Contemporary newspapers portrayed the Blackwoods as respected members of the Salem community. Jonathan Blackwood was a successful cattle trader who traveled extensively throughout New England. While his wife Martha was active in local church activities, their respected reputation inadvertently masked a decade of horrific murders. As you can imagine, outside the peaceful streets of Salem, inside a seemingly normal family, a dark, terrifying shadow still lurks layer upon layer, waiting for someone like Dr. Foster to uncover. How many other secrets remain untold? Have the victims completely disappeared from the town's memory? The investigation also revealed that Jonathan Blackwood's business activities had inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, created numerous opportunities to meet potential victims. As a cattle trader, he often traveled to remote farms, dealing with strangers who could disappear without immediate notice. These legitimate trips also provided him with access to isolated locations and provided a plausible explanation for blood tools and other evidence that would have raised suspicions elsewhere. Analysis of the family's financial records by Detective Rodriguez revealed an unusual increase in wealth during the 1890s, suggesting that robbery may have been the motive in at least some of the murders. The Blackwoods clearly profited from crime while maintaining the facade of a typical, well-respected Victorian family. But the most chilling aspect of the investigation concerns what the Blackwood children witnessed during their formative years. Margaret Blackwood, the youngest child in the 1895 photograph, left behind a trove of personal files and diaries that shed a chilling light on the family's criminal activities. The diaries, written in Margaret's 20s and preserved in her estate, reveal that all three Blackwood children knew about their father's murders from a very young age. Rather than being haunted or horrified, the children were gradually conditioned to view the murders as a normal part of the family. One entry from Margaret's teenage years reads, "Father brought another man home today. Thomas helped him get ready, and Mother made sure Mary and I stayed upstairs until it was finished." The new man would look good with the others in the living room. The chillingly casual tone of these entries suggests that murder had become part of the Blackwood family's daily routine. Even more chillingly, Margaret describes how the scalp collection was integrated into the family's daily routine. Guests always complimented Dad on his hunting trophies. We said they were from animals he had taken on business trips. No one suspected anything. Mother said it was better that way. The diary also reveals that the children were taught to see their father's victims as less than human. Margaret writes, "Father said the people he brought back were vagrants and criminals, and no one remembered them. He said, 'We are making the world safer by removing dangerous people from society.'" Thomas Blackwood, the eldest son in the 1895 portrait, was apparently groomed to be his father's accomplice. Margaret describes how Thomas learned to help his father with the murders and prepare scalps, seeing these as valuable skills for adulthood. Most horrifying was the realization that the family intended to continue the murderous tradition into the next generation. Margaret's diary mentions discussions about which of the children would take over their father's responsibilities and continue his criminal activities after Jonathan Blackwood's death. The psychological manipulation of the children suggests a level of systematic cruelty that goes far beyond individual cases, creating a multi-generational criminal empire that could have continued indefinitely had no events intervened. Detective Rodriguez's investigation also reveals why the Blackwood family's murder spree ended and how they managed to avoid the attention of the police. The answer lies in a series of events that took place between 1895 and 1900, leading to the family's breakup and the secrecy of the crimes. Jonathan Blackwood died in 1897, just 2 years after the portrait was taken, under circumstances that contemporary newspapers described as mysterious. The Salem Evening News reported that Blackwood was found dead in his barn, apparently killed by one of his animals, and ruled an accident. However, modern analysis of news reports reveals numerous inconsistencies, suggesting that the official account was deliberately staged. Witnesses reported a stranger on the Blackwood estate the night Jonathan died, and there was evidence of a struggle inconsistent with an animal attack. More importantly, Jonathan's death occurred shortly after a victim who had escaped his grasp may have reported the attempted murder to the authorities. Margaret's diary makes cryptic references to the escaped and her father's growing paranoia in the weeks before his death. You can imagine the mood. Salem outside was peaceful, but on Blackwood Farm, murderous plans and quiet fear created a pervasive darkness just waiting to be rediscovered by someone like Dr. Foster. More than a century later, what other secrets have yet to be revealed? Evidence suggests that Jonathan Blackwood may have been killed by a victim who tried to fight back or by someone seeking revenge for the previous murders. His death while ending the family's murder spree also eliminated the only key witness who could have revealed the location of the bodies or the full extent of the crimes. After Jonathan's death, Martha Blackwood quickly sold the family estate and moved her children to Boston, where they adopted new identities and attempted to blend into the urban anonymity. The collection of scalps was carefully packed and taken with her, suggesting that Martha was reluctant to give up her trophies despite knowing they were dangerous. Thomas, the eldest son, who had been trained as his father's accomplice, died in World War I, taking detailed knowledge of the family's crimes to the grave. Mary, the middle child, died of the 1918 flu. Only Margaret survived into old age, carrying the burden of family secrets for more than a century. The family's success in disappearing into Boston's immigrant communities helped them escape investigation. And it wasn't until 2023 that the family portrait provided the first concrete evidence of their murderous acts. The Massachusetts Police Department's forensics lab used the latest forensic techniques to extract the most information from the 1895 photograph, which it considered a key piece of evidence in a serial murder case that spanned more than 128 years. Advanced digital technology revealed details invisible to previous generations of investigators. High-resolution scans and computer analysis of the collection of scalps in the photo provided detailed information about the victims. Forensic experts determined the approximate ages, hair color and texture of at least 8 separate scalps, each representing a murder. The diversity of hair confirmed that the Blackwoods murdered victims of various ages and ethnicities over a long period of time. Most notably, advanced analysis revealed that one scalp had a distinctive braided hairstyle consistent with Native American hairstyles of the 1890s. This discovery led to collaboration with tribal historians and the FBI's involvement in investigating possible hate crimes against Native Americans. Photographic analysis also provided important information about the preservation and mounting techniques of the scalp collection. Forensic experts determined that the scalps had been treated with chemicals and mounting materials consistent with professional taxidermy techniques of the 1890s, suggesting that Jonathan Blackwood possessed remarkable skill in specimen preparation. Even more horrifying, the scalps were arranged chronologically with subtle differences in preservation quality and mounting, suggesting a collection accumulated over many years. The systematic way in which they were displayed suggested that the murders were planned and executed with meticulous precision. State-of-the-art facial recognition technology was applied to the family portrait, creating a detailed biometric profile of each member, which was compared with historical records, immigration papers, and death certificates, confirming the identities of Jonathan Martha, Thomas Mary, and Margaret Blackwood. Forensic analysis also examined the background details in the photo for additional evidence. Enhancement of the image revealed that other items on the living room wall were personal artifacts of the victims. Jewelry, watches, and small items probably also taken as trophies along with the scalp collection. This comprehensive forensic approach transforms a single historical photograph into a detailed crime scene analysis, providing law enforcement with the most complete picture of the Blackwood family's criminal activities and the scope of their murder spree in the 1890s. Detective Rodriguez expanded the investigation, collaborating with genealogists, tribal historians, and community organizations to identify the victims in the Blackwood family's scalp collection. Can you imagine the thrill of seeing a seemingly ordinary portrait, but with a hidden history of crime? Every detail, every strand of hair telling a grisly story. How many secrets are yet to be revealed from that 1895 Victorian living room? The process of naming and telling the